There is a doctor in Chicago, 43 years old, went to school for 12 years to earn the right to do what she does. Board certified, published research, the kind of person who reads a study and can immediately identify its methodological flaws. Intellectually, she is operating in the top fraction of a percent of the population. Her income last year was $214,000. Her retirement savings balance is $41,000. She has a car lease on a vehicle that costs more than most people's annual salary, a mortgage that is technically affordable but leaves almost no room for anything else, $3,000 in credit card debt that has been approximately $3,000 for 2 years. She knows she should be saving more. She knows the compound interest math. She could explain it to you better than most financial advisors, and yet, here is what I want you to understand before anything else in this video. The doctor's financial situation is not a knowledge problem. It is not an intelligence problem. It is not even a discipline problem in the conventional sense. It is a psychology problem, and the psychology problems that produce bad financial decisions are more common in highly intelligent people than in anyone else. Not less common, more. If that surprises you, it is because you have been working with the wrong model of how financial decisions actually get made. Today, I am going to show you the real model. And once you see it, you are going to recognize something in yourself that no amount of financial education ever helped you see clearly. My name is Sig, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, behavioral finance, and specifically why the people who should theoretically make the best financial decisions so often do not. Subscribe to this channel right now if you want to understand money at the level of actual human psychology rather than at the level of what people are supposed to do, and give this video a thumbs up if at some point in the next 20 minutes you catch yourself thinking that sounds exactly like something I have done, because you will. Let me show you why. Here is the model most people are working with when they think about financial behavior. Smart people know more. Knowing more produces better decisions. Therefore, smart people make better financial decisions. This model is wrong at the second step. Knowing more does not automatically produce better decisions. It produces more elaborate justifications for decisions that were already made by a different part of the brain. The research on this is consistent across decades of behavioral economics. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist who spent his career studying human judgment, documented extensively that intelligent people are not less susceptible to cognitive biases than less intelligent people. In many cases, they are more susceptible because they are better at constructing convincing explanations for why their biased decision was actually the rational one. Kahneman called this the intelligence trap. The ability to reason that normally produces better decisions becomes the ability to rationalize, which produces better-sounding versions of the same bad decisions. The financial version of this plays out every day in the portfolios, the spending habits, and the savings accounts of some of the most educated and high-earning people in America, and it plays out through a specific set of psychological mechanisms that have names, that have been studied extensively, and that once you can see them, you can begin to actually address rather than just knowing intellectually that you should do better. The first and most powerful bias that affects intelligent people disproportionately is overconfidence, not generic arrogance, a specific, well-documented psychological phenomenon where high ability in one domain produces unjustified confidence in adjacent domains. The doctor who can diagnose a rare condition from ambiguous symptoms has developed a level of expert pattern recognition that is genuinely extraordinary. That same pattern recognition faculty does not transfer to picking individual stocks, but the confidence built from years of being right in medicine does transfer, and it produces financial decisions that feel calibrated and informed and are actually a different category of decision being made with borrowed confidence from a completely different skill set. A study from the University of California at Berkeley analyzed the trading behavior of over 78,000 individual investors over 6 years. The finding was stark. The more frequently investors traded, the worse their returns. The bottom quintile of traders by return frequency was also the most active, the most confident, and the most educated among the group. Overconfidence in financial markets is specifically measured by something called the miscalibration effect. When you ask people to give a confidence interval on a financial prediction, the range within which they are 90% sure the answer falls, most people give ranges that are far too narrow. They are much more certain than they should be, and the effect is strongest in people with high measured cognitive ability. The doctor picked 3 individual stocks she had researched thoroughly last year. She was confident in her analysis. 2 of them are down significantly. The third is flat. Her 3-fund index portfolio that she contributes to automatically and ignores is up 11%. The part of her portfolio she paid the least attention to and felt the least confident about is dramatically outperforming the part she spent the most time and cognitive energy on. This is not an accident. It is the overconfidence bias producing exactly the outcome the research predicts. Here is the second bias that hits intelligent people particularly hard and that produces a financial consequence most people never calculate because it does not show up as a loss. It shows up as an absence of gain. Analysis paralysis is the tendency to delay or avoid a decision by continuing to gather and analyze information past the point where additional information improves the quality of the decision. In most domains, intelligent people are right that more analysis produces better decisions. In investing and financial planning, more analysis past a certain threshold actively produces worse outcomes because it delays the compounding that begins the moment money is invested rather than researched. Meet James, 41 years old, software engineer, has been planning to open an investment account for 4 years. He has read 11 books on investing. He follows 6 finance channels. He has a spreadsheet comparing 32 different ETFs. He knows more about index fund construction than most financial advisors. He has not invested a single dollar yet because he has not yet found the optimal entry point, the optimal fund selection, the optimal tax structure for his specific situation. In those 4 years, the S&P 500 has returned approximately 60%. If James had invested $20,000 4 years ago in a simple total market index fund, he would have approximately $32,000 today. Instead, he has $20,000 and a spreadsheet. The $12,000 gap between what he has and what he could have is not the result of making a bad decision. It is the result of making no decision, which the research consistently shows is itself one of the most expensive financial decisions a person can make. The optimal investment strategy executed with a 2-year delay dramatically underperforms a suboptimal strategy executed immediately. Smart people delay. The market does not wait. Here is the behavioral finance insight that Kahneman won the Nobel Prize for, and that explains more about bad financial decisions than almost any other single concept. Loss aversion. Human beings experience the pain of losing something at approximately twice the intensity of the pleasure of gaining the equivalent amount. Losing $100 feels roughly twice as bad as gaining $100 feels good. This is not irrational in evolutionary terms. In an environment of genuine scarcity, losing resources was more dangerous than failing to gain them. The nervous system evolved to weight losses heavily. The problem is that this evolutionary calibration produces systematically bad financial decisions in a modern investment environment. Investors sell winning investments too early to lock in gains and hold losing investments too long to avoid realizing losses. This is called the disposition effect, and it has been documented across virtually every demographic and every market. But here is the part that specifically hits intelligent people hard. Loss aversion in intelligent investors does not just affect individual stock decisions. It affects the fundamental decision of how much risk to take in a long-term portfolio. Intelligent people who understand volatility intellectually still experience the emotional pain of a down market more intensely than average. They are more likely to check their portfolios frequently because they want to understand what is happening. Checking frequently means experiencing more losses because markets are volatile in short windows even when they trend upward over long ones. More experienced losses triggers more loss aversion responses. More loss aversion responses produce more conservative positioning than the investor's actual long-term situation warrants. The doctor has her investment portfolio allocated 60% to bonds. She is 43 years old, with a 20-plus year investment horizon before she needs this money. A standard financial planning model would suggest 70 to 80% equities. She chose the bond-heavy allocation because the 2020 to market decline was viscerally painful in a way that her rational understanding of long-term investing could not fully override. Her conservative allocation will cost her hundreds of thousands of dollars in foregone returns over the next 2 decades, not because she made a bad decision by conventional standards, because loss aversion is running a version of her financial life that her prefrontal cortex would not have chosen if it were the only voice in the room. Here is the bias that explains one of the most consistent patterns in high-earner financial behavior, and that I think will feel personally familiar to a lot of people watching this. It is called relative income thinking, and it works like this. Human beings do not evaluate financial situations in absolute terms. They evaluate them relative to reference points, and reference points shift with income. When you earned $40,000, a car payment of $300 felt significant. When you earn $200,000, that same $300 payment is psychologically trivial. It barely registers. The absolute amount is identical. The psychological weight is completely different because your reference point shifted. This is why lifestyle inflation is not primarily a discipline problem. It is a reference point problem. As income rises, the psychological threshold for what counts, a meaningful expense rises with it. Individually, each expense increase is too small to trigger deliberate evaluation. A nicer coffee here, a better apartment there, a car that is reasonable given the income level. Collectively, these reference point shifts produce a cost structure that can consume a $200,000 salary as completely as it consumed a $50,000 salary 10 years earlier, leaving the high earner with a more expensive life and the same amount of savings capacity they had at a third of the income. The doctor's spending has expanded to match her income so precisely that her monthly cash flow at $214,000 is not dramatically different from her cash flow at $120,000 5 years ago. Both times she felt like she was managing reasonably well. Both times almost nothing was building. The reference point kept moving. The gap stayed identical. Here is a bias that Richard Thaler documented and won the Nobel Prize for in 2017, and that produces genuinely bizarre financial behavior in otherwise intelligent people. Mental accounting is the tendency to treat money differently based on its source, its label, or its intended purpose rather than treating all money as fungible. In practice, this produces decisions like carrying credit card debt at 22% interest while simultaneously maintaining a savings account earning 4%. The math on this is unambiguous. The savings account is costing you 18 percentage points annually relative to paying off the card. A person who understands compound interest can calculate this in 30 seconds, and yet millions of intelligent people do exactly this. Because the savings account and the credit card are in different mental accounts. The savings account is the safety fund. The credit card is the spending fund. They feel categorically different even though mathematically they are the same money. Or consider the bonus mental account. Most people treat a bonus or a tax refund differently from their regular income. They spend it more freely. They put it in a different category. Even though $1 of bonus is identical in every way to $1 of salary, the mental account it lands in determines whether it gets invested, spent on something enjoyable, or used to pay off debt based on something that has nothing to do with optimal financial decision-making. James received a $12,000 bonus last year. He spent $8,000 of it on a vacation that he would never have authorized from his regular paycheck and put $4,000 in savings. If he had treated the bonus as regular income and applied it to the most financially optimal use, in his case paying down a 7% student loan, the decision would have been straightforward. The mental account it landed in made it feel like different money, with different rules, producing a suboptimal outcome that he would not have made if he had evaluated it on pure financial merits. Here is the hardest thing to accept about financial psychology for intelligent people, and I want to say it as directly as I can. Knowing about these biases does not protect you from them. That is not the way bias works. Conlon himself acknowledged that despite spending his entire career documenting cognitive biases, he remained susceptible to them. Understanding that overconfidence exists did not make him immune to overconfidence in specific situations. Understanding loss aversion did not make the emotional pain of losses disappear. Knowledge creates the possibility of designing systems that work around the bias. It does not eliminate the bias itself. This is why the most effective financial decision-making does not involve trying to think your way past emotions in the moment. It involves building structures that produce good outcomes without requiring you to win a battle with your limbic system every time a financial decision comes up. The structure is the solution, not better thinking in the moment of decision. Let me be specific about what actually works, because this video should produce change, not just recognition. For overconfidence, the structure is removing active decision-making from long-term investing entirely. A three-fund portfolio in a tax-advantaged account with automatic contributions requires zero ongoing decision-making, which means zero opportunities for overconfidence to produce expensive active decisions. The research on passive versus active investing is not ambiguous. Over any 20-year period, more than 80% of active funds underperform their benchmark index net of fees. The confident stock picker is almost always underperforming the person who chose an index fund and stopped thinking about it. For analysis paralysis, the structure is a decision deadline combined with good enough criteria, not optimal criteria. Good enough. If your investment strategy meets three basic criteria: broadly diversified, low cost, tax advantaged, implement it this week, not when you find the perfect fund. This week. The cost of delay is calculable, and it is almost always larger than any benefit that additional research would produce. For loss aversion, the structure is removing the ability to monitor frequently. Check your investment account quarterly, not daily, not weekly, quarterly. Every additional check is an opportunity for loss aversion to produce a decision your rational long-term thinking would not have made. Calendar the quarterly check and close the app between reviews. For mental accounting, the structure is consolidation. Treat all money as the same money. When a bonus arrives, apply it to the most financially optimal use rather than the use that the mental account it landed in suggests. Tax refund, bonus, inheritance, regular paycheck. The optimal use is determined by the math of your situation, not by the category the money arrived in. For lifestyle creep, the structure is automation that happens before the reference point can adjust. The moment income increases, direct a predetermined percentage of the increase to investment accounts before it hits your checking account. The reference point never gets the chance to shift upward because the money never appears in the spendable category. Let me come back to the doctor, because I want to show you what happens when these structures are actually implemented. She read about behavioral finance. She recognized herself in the overconfidence and loss aversion description specifically. She made three structural changes. She moved her actively managed positions to a three-fund index portfolio. One decision. Done. She increased her automatic 401k contribution from 6% to 18%. It happened on payday, before her checking account received the money. She stopped checking her investment account weekly. She set a calendar reminder for a quarterly review and deleted the app from her phone home screen. 6 months later, she has not made a single active investment decision. Her portfolio has performed in line with the market. Her savings rate has tripled. Her Sunday morning financial anxiety is measurably lower, not because she got smarter about money. She was already smart, because she built structures that produce good outcomes without requiring her to beat her own psychology in real time. The dumb money decisions that smart people make are almost never the result of insufficient intelligence. They are almost always the result of intelligence being applied to justify decisions that psychology was already making. The fix is not more intelligence. It is better architecture. The doctor did not become a better investor by learning more about markets. She became a better investor by designing a system that did not require her to be one. Here is the thing about financial intelligence that I want you to carry out of this video. The smartest financial decision most people can make is to recognize that their intelligence is not a reliable financial instrument in real time, that the cognitive tools that make them excellent at their profession are the same tools that will construct the most convincing rationalization for a decision that loss aversion or overconfidence or mental accounting actually made. The smartest investors are not the ones who make the best in the moment decisions. They are the ones who build systems that minimize the number of in the moment decisions required, who automate contributions before spending happens, who choose simple portfolios over complex ones, who check accounts quarterly rather than daily, who apply bonuses to the mathematically optimal use rather than the most emotionally satisfying one. None of this requires extraordinary intelligence. It requires the specific wisdom of knowing where your intelligence ends and your psychology begins, and building the fence at that exact line. Now that you understand why smart people make bad money decisions, the next question is what the actual financial decisions look like that produce the best outcomes over time. In my next video, break down the exact moment compound interest starts working for you and why getting there sooner is worth more than any investment strategy you will ever find. That video is on the screen right now. Watch it next.